Excuse me, we're gonna get started, please. Thank you. Mr. Harris, I would imagine will be here momentarily. Mrs. Jackie will not be here today. She had an unexpected trip out of town, so we're very thankful that Mr. Hutek is here to help us go through the work session agenda. And we're going to do things a little bit differently today. We're going to let the work session items come first, and then we'll have our school board comments and go over the agenda after we have allowed the topics to come before us. So, Mr. Hutek.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to do the agenda review and all that afterwards
Yes,
as
sir.
well? Okay. Okay, then we'll get started. We've got a few items off the board right off the bat in the beginning. If we would, I'd have Melissa. Melissa's going to present to us on the first agenda item with the Janie Howard Wilson SAC plan.
So just a little bit of background. Janie Howard Wilson is here. The school is being represented by their principal, Dr. Linda Ray, and assistant principal, April Barnhart. Janie Howard Wilson is currently under corrective action for low student performance. Last year, they received their 4th consecutive D, and statute requires that the charter school choose one of 4 options as a corrective action. They can choose to either contract, and this probably sounds very familiar because it's quite similar. They can contract for educational services to be provided directly to students. They can contract with an outside entity that has demonstrated record of effectiveness to operate the school. They can reorganize the school under a new director or a principal who is authorized to hire new staff, or they can voluntarily close the school. In addition, the director and a representative must appear before the sponsor to present the school's academic deficiencies and their plan to raise student performance. The school's improvement plan must be approved by the board as well. Today, Dr. Ray is with us, and I will let her introduce very quickly who she has, or who was in the back of the room. They're still there. Before she gets started, but she will then present to you their plan for improvement.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I have with me today Ms. April Barnhart. She's our assistant principal. And when I call your name, just stand. I would really appreciate it. Ms. Harris, she is our resource, or our reading resource. And we have Mr. Boyer, which is our science. And we have Ms. Kiefer, who is our math resource. And our superintendent is on the way.
Okay.
I called him and told him it was 1, so I guess,
Okay.
because on that sheet that you gave me, it's a little hot. All right, what I'm going to do is just go through the PowerPoint, and I haven't done this before, so I guess you guys will stop me when you have questions, okay? First of all, our mission, that was the first thing that was indicated. We live by this. We say it every day, and our kids know exactly where we are as well as the staff. And these are our best practices. This is what we're really focusing in on, staying true to our mission and our beliefs, and visiting successful schools in the area, which includes the schools within the charter system, and also I'm going to venture out and also visit some schools in Boston and also here in Polk County. Chain of Lakes is probably the closest one, and I do know the administrators there, so hopefully they'll let us come in and see what they're doing as well. And building relationships with all stakeholders, and we're talking parents, we're talking the Winter Haven community, as well as building a strong relationship with Polk County. Monitoring student data and the budget is our primary objective, trying to make sure that we are allowing the data to drive our instruction and focusing in on priorities that will make big impacts, which is hiring outstanding teachers, and then celebrating a lot of our accomplishments. The demographics, it's not listed on the school improvement plan. It doesn't upload for some reason, I'm not quite sure why it doesn't happen. But this is actually today as of Tuesday, October the 24th. This is where we are. We have 27.3% white, black 34.5%, Hispanic 35.7%, Asian 2.2%, American Indians 0.2%, mixed 2%, ESC 22.3%, and the poverty our rate is 84.1, and ELL has increased from 17% last year to 19.3. This is how we did by grade level, and in the last 3 years, that was one of the requirements that you guys wanted to see. Also, I have it by race as well. If you look across, starting with grade 3 in 2015, 16, and 17, of course, those are not the same children, but it looks like it's an increase in 3rd grade. But if you look horizontally, you can see that 2001, it was 21% in 3rd grade, and then if we drop down, when those students were in 4th grade in 2016, they had a decrease, and then this past year they increased by 1%, which is 22%. So, and then the science has been, it dropped quite a bit last year. So
That's different students too, the 5th
Right.
grade's different each year.
And this is actually the school grade according to FSA from the state. We only had 36% of our students in levels 3, 4, and 5, 41 in math, 24% in science, and 42% in the learning games, math 48%, and our lowest 25% was 43 and 40. And the total that we received was 274 points out of 700 points, which gave us a 39%, and we are 2 points from receiving the C.
Have to think about the reading. Our
Sure.
reading's continuously going up. We've gone up 13 percentage points since they started the FSA. We raised 6 percentage points since last year to this year. We have an extra hour of reading, so our reading is continuously going up. We've seen a drop in the math, so our focus this year is a bit more emphasis on math as we do in reading.
This is by groups. We have white, black, Hispanic, and then our totals and our economically disadvantaged levels are there. And that where it says at-risk reading, that's just the number of students that did not score in the levels 3, 4, and 5. And as you can see that tunnel on the side there, we are trying to go up the hill there. 39% which would receive a D, and only 2 percentage points from a C. Challenges, inconsistency, and when I started at Janie Howard Wilson, I sat down with all of the staff members just to see what their take was. You know, where are we? What do we need? What is happening here? And these are the things that I was told. Inconsistency, school culture needed improvement, culture not implemented with fidelity. The PD, professional development, needed MTSS process. Data needed to drive instruction, and lacked growth mindset. Our growth mindset, this is something that our assistant principal here, Ms. came up with, and it's been really, really helping a whole lot with our school. Letting kids know, letting the community know that we believe that our kids can do whatever. There's no such thing as not. And our statement that we make now is, I can't yet, which means that in the future you will be if you put a whole lot of effort into it. Okay, effects from challenges. No unity, mindset that disadvantaged students are incapable of learning. We have poor attendance, students and staff, low student enrollment. When I was there many, many years ago, we had over 600 kids. Right now, we have approximately 400 children there at Janie Howard. High staff turnover, 4 consecutive D school grades. Current action, administration provides consistency. Staff is involved in decision-making, creating a culture of trust, care, empowerment, and respect to reduce staff turnover. Teachers assist in determining the professional development needed and dedicate 1 day per week, which is on Wednesday, for professional development. Building a family-oriented environment, providing constant feedback to staff, and hiring exemplary staff members. And here's the accountable team. Myself, Ms. Barnhart, and the leadership team, which you see behind me, and also our teachers. We didn't want to omit anybody. We all are accountable for our school success. Monitoring progress. This is what we use. Student and staff attendance records. Every day we say what our percentages are as far as attendance is concerned. And I know that I have done, my master's thesis was on attendance. And I know that there's a strong correlation, student attendance and staff attendance. So that's what we're focusing in iStation data, we're using maps, benchmark assessments, athletics for math, and professional development feedback, observations, stakeholder culture surveys. We were sending out a survey wanting to know exactly how they feel that we're doing. And we received $164,000 for this year, and we're using the money, as you see here, reading improvements. We have, in third, fourth, and fifth grade, we have small group instruction. We've hired teachers to do that, qualified teachers, teachers who are certified, and we have 2 paraprofessionals that also are working in those 2 areas. And also, we started for reading and math. We have a Saturday academy in which we have buses to go around to get the students to bring them, and our focus is the tier 3 and tier 2 students, and there are 6 teachers who are working in that area. We're getting ready to start also a science academy on Saturday as well. I just spoke to a teacher on Saturday. She's willing to come to help only our 5th grade students. We're also purchasing iStations, Chromebooks, and supplies from the UNICEF money. And our goal, by 2018, Janie Howard Wilson will increase by 3% in math, reading, science, learning gains, and the lowest 25% on the FSA. Success is a mindset. Woo, that's what we say at our school. Not can't, but we can. Thank you. Are there any questions?
On the
Yes.
one screen, it said there was inconsistency. What do you mean by that? Could you elaborate? a little?
Yes, inconsistent in the sense that we use a lot of, we've been changing a lot of what being taught, the curriculum being taught. They're changing quite a bit, and you don't really have enough time to see what really works.
So inconsistency in the curriculum, is that from the teacher's perspective, do you think, or?
That's not, that's,
We actually started a program, if you saw the 3rd grade reading was 58% proficient. This will be we started a Super Kids program K through 2. That 3rd grade group is the first group to go all the way through the curriculum, and the scores are showing, and we started a new reading street curriculum. And our reading, as I said, has gone up. Every year it's going up. Our bottom quartile increased 19 percentage points. So the curriculum that we've had, it's our 3rd year using, is, we're seeing the benefits of that. So in math, we've seen it going down, and we tried to use different curriculum, and now we've got a really structured math curriculum. It's instruction coach, and it's FSA standards based, but it's really structured for all teachers, because as we know, not all teachers in elementary are strong in math. And we've made a decision this year to group our math strong teachers to just teach math all day long. Because we really have seen, math's not like it was when we were younger. They're doing pre-algebra in 5th grade. So you really have to think strategically and get those best teachers with the best subjects teaching the right thing, and that's a change we've made this year.
I'm a process person, that's my background, and it's my experience that inconsistency in applying process, it always leads to failure. You can be assured of it. So I'm glad to see that you're addressing that and applying a consistent, in this case, curriculum process, so that's good.
Can you go back to the slide that shows the academic success of the kids by ethnicity? Okay, under the group, the black group, at-risk reading is 74.6%, which is a very high percentage point. And I would like to know what strategies will you have in place, and do you have in place currently that's going to address that concern? And then the other question that I have is your makeup of your staff. Can you tell me what the breakdown is by race of your staff and by gender? I maybe estimate it if you don't know it, or maybe just get it to me later.
okay.
Okay.
First of all, as far as trying to, not necessarily with blacks or white, what I'm talking about all children.
Right.
The tier 3 kids are who we're addressing in the Saturday Academy to give them additional assistance with that. With the teachers that are already teaching, they have decided to come back on Saturdays to address that.
Now, have you had to reposition your teachers? The ones, I think in one of your slides, you talked about not believing that disadvantaged kids can learn. Have you had to reposition your teachers and change, and add new staff who do believe that disadvantaged kids can learn?
Yes, and I'm still doing it. Yes.
And another thing we do to reach the at-risk students is, we all teach. I mean, I teach, we pull small groups. We do we structure their lessons on what their needs are. We have some fifth graders who need phonics skills, so some teachers take them to work on basic phonics, that they can't read a sentence, and you can't expect them to pass the FSA if we're not meeting those basic needs. So we have so much small group instruction during the day, on Saturdays, and we have our interventionists from the SIG grant that are pulling them out, one-on-one instruction throughout the day. We're just trying to pull everybody there to meet the individual needs of each student.
And Ms. Fields, you know, it's not, the teachers will, they have to believe that, but the kids have to believe in themselves as well. You know, and that's one of the things that we're really pushing. I brought in some data from the other schools in our area, even from Schuylkill, to let the kids see where all these schools are, you know, and ask them, you know, do you think that we can do better? They didn't know what was going on the outside, so we brought data day into the kids to let them see as well, so that they can also be a part of making the school successful as well.
This is your first year?
Yes.
Well, I think that,
I was at Janie Howard in 2004.
I remember.
So I came out of retirement.
Yay. I thought you said, from this chart, you said that you were doing better in reading than in math, but to me, this chart looks like math is stronger. Can you?
Well, math is stronger, but reading is constantly going up, our math is going down. So the shift is, we're moving up in reading. We've gone from, we're going up, we went up 6 percentage points this year, but math, we dropped 4 percentage points. So the trend of the years is math is going down, reading is going up, which is a problem, because usually kids who don't have the phonics skills and the comprehension skills, they're stars at math. That's where they're stars. So we're trying to figure out what's going on there and put more emphasis in the math.
Oh, okay. And the other question, you said you've lost students or you're not at capacity. Are you seeing a lot of children leaving your school to go to another school because of?
Well, that's what I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we change the grade and they come back. And everybody wants to be in an A school or B school, you know? So I understand that.
And if you look at the chart, which was surprising to us, our Hispanic scored the highest on the reading level, our ELL kids, and the majority of them are the Hispanic females. So we were surprising to see that, but majority of our proficient in the high third grade going to fourth grade are borderline 2s, 3s. So we're really trying to put emphasis on keeping them at a 3 because their couple points could drop back to a 2. And as we know, the test gets harder every year. So we've really tried to keep those kids together, get the best reading teacher in there we can. Our ELL teacher comes in, works with them daily, just so that we don't see a drop, because, you know, it's a difficult challenge to, if they're borderline, to keep them going when the expectation's higher. So we're trying to group them together and make sure that we have extra reading resources in.
And then our African Americans are lower in the reading, but higher in the math. So,
The percentages you give us here, could you share with us some raw numbers? What's your total enrollment and what's your total minority enrollment?
Our total enrollment's is exactly 400. I'm not sure the exact raw numbers for each individual.
You just multiply the
They showed
percentages
the
by 4.
Percentage points to us, I think it would have been at the beginning.
With that number then, should I redirect you to your demographics where you tell us your minority rate?
there it is right there. What is it now? I'm sorry.
The demographics page on your school improvement plan?
Yeah, I know that it's not right, but there it is right there. Right there.
Why would that document have an incorrect number on it?
I have no idea. I have asked that question. I even asked her. You can ask her.
It was the same thing last year too.
Survey 2.
Yeah.
It won't load
Survey
up.
3.
It comes from a survey that's loaded to DOE, And unfortunately, same thing happened last year, it is not loaded properly, and we see these issues over and over again. And so, and it's not just with the charter schools, so that very first page is not anything that the school itself can manipulate, it comes directly from DOE. Now, the really crazy thing is if you go to FLDOE and you pull the numbers are accurate. It's just because of the database that the information is coming from to actually feed Sims. So it's
The
a technical
database
glitch.
that we provide them, we being the district provides the DOE,
The survey is provided, but there's a glitch somewhere. and it
are
just
they
has
aware
not
of that
been-
in Tallahassee?
Yes, they are.
And their response when the public looks at this is the first page of the report, the public is going to make assumptions and jump to conclusions based on this first page. Without what you just shared with us, where does the public get correct information and know which one is correct?
That's a good question.
I pulled it off Genesis. I got it from Genesis.
I think through the school report card though, you had on the FLDOE, you can go and look at the school report card and it shows the accurate demographics, but
But
right
if
on
I
the-
go there and pull the school improvement plan,
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
so I
show
don't
that.
know who to believe, and once you start doubting statistics, you don't believe anybody,
Yeah.
because you don't think you're getting the right information.
But that came
It's all
directly
coming from the state though, that our school grade and demographics is on there, and so is the SIP upload, so I don't know where the glitch is, but it happened last year, because I remember you asking the same question last year.
I did that.
Because
just
zero
because
doesn't
it's fair.
reflect the
Just
community of
fair.
Lake Wales.
No, I know.
And you're not the only one, charter schools, I asked that question, because I asked the same question in Auburndale. If you don't reflect the community, you shouldn't be in business,
Yeah,
you know?
I know.
I'm pretty sure Jenny Howard Wilson reflects the community of Lake Wales. Can I say something? It's a pleasure to see you, Dr. Ray. I wish you were still with us.
Well, thank you.
Do we? This is a question for us. Do we have any schools that are 27% white that are that low of a percentage of white? I actually did not realize that. Anybody know off the top of their head?
I don't know off the top of our head, we can certainly,
It doesn't matter. I just those are really very eye-opening numbers. Where are the kids who are leaving Janie Howard Wilson going? Are they going within your own, the charter system, or are they coming to Chain of Lakes or to Spook Hill? Where do you think they're going primarily?
I think the majority of them are staying within the system. Babson Park, Hillcrest, anywhere there's not a D.
How does that work? You don't have to tell me. I'm sorry. I just that's.
No, ask the question, and if I can't answer it,
I'm like, I'm always a little baffled by the enrollment. How do you guys get zoned people, or do people ask for you?
well, we're zoned.
We get
You're zoned within the charter structure that overlays ours. So if they leave you, do they go to the next zoned one, or do they have to apply to one of the 3 other schools? What's
They apply,
They
they'll be put
apply.
on a waiting list at
They
the other
apply
charter
for it.
schools. They can go to Spook Hill, which would be. Spook
automatically,
Hill.
right?
Right.
Yeah. Or okay,
That's the
so
opt-out school
so
charter.
okay, so you get zoned. So kids get zoned for Janie Howard, and some of them, I would guess, then as soon as they walk in the door, at kindergarten, are putting themselves on a wait list for Babson Park, or so it's kind of like with our magnet schools. The day somebody walks in the door at Philip O'Brien or whatever, they're on the wait list for Lincoln.
We have no waiting list. We have-
Right.
we-
Okay.
nobody's not
Okay.
gonna-
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, and glad to see you all here today. I'm sad for the circumstances, but excited for the future, and welcome back. We're excited to have you working again with our kids, and I know there's gonna be great things coming from Janie Howard Wilson, and we're here to support you and back you, because at the end of the day, it's all about the children, and I know y'all are doing great strides, and I know you're gonna achieve that 2%, 2 points, whatever it is, and move up. I know you are. I know how many dedicated teachers and staff that you have, so bless you and continue to do the great things you started, and I know we're gonna see wonderful things coming out of there at the end of this year, so good luck.
Thank you very much.
yes.
This is kind of going off what Billy said, just for clarification. For our DRF schools, we have to send out a letter to all of the parents saying, these are your other options. Do you all have to send out that letter? And if so, are there options, the
Yeah, we have
other?
opt-out school, which is Spook Hill, we put it on our
Okay.
website too. We have
So
to
it's
post.
just the opt-out, that's, they would come back to Spook Hill, they can't go somewhere else within the
They
charter
can
system.
apply to any charter school.
But they have to reapply.
As long
Okay.
as there's not a waiting list or a grade level's not full.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to proceed on with agenda item 4. Melissa Brady will stay intact. This is going to be for the 4 charter school proposals presented, and we will do them one at a time, right? And Vicki Mays, thank you.
Let me introduce Vicki Mace. You all probably recognize her. But she's here with us today to present the charter review team's recommendation to the superintendent and board. Mrs. Mace has served Polk County as an outside reviewer of charter applications and is a consultant for the district review process and has been for the last 4 years. She comes to us with 35 years of experience in education. She was a teacher, an AP, a principal, cabinet member of the superintendent, and she also worked in the charter school office for 10 years for Brevard County. So she brings to the table lots of experience and a wealth of knowledge. So I'm going to move over and let Vicki take the reins. I think we can click. I think we're like really high tech now. Okay, let me just try it real quick.
New high-tech market.
Good afternoon. I recognize a lot of you, so thank you very much for having me back. Every year I think I'm retiring, but I get the call. And it's a pleasure to work with the folks at Polk County. It's like a second family now. I know we have some new board members, so I'm gonna repeat a couple things just so that you'll be up to speed as to what we're doing during our application process. And as you know, all the applications have to be evaluated with the Florida Department of Education Standard Charter evaluation. Oh, I gotta click, I forgot, thank you. Oops. Melissa, how did you do that? Is it your high tab?
Click the arrow.
And then down straight.
I lied.
We're going low tech. I'll just push this there. Okay, we had 4 charter applications this year. Edward Bach Academy North, the Grant Career Technical Vocational High School, Our Children's Prep, and Navigator Academy of Leadership. Just to let you know, we're 11 members that voted this year on the application process. We had 2 meetings. Interesting year because of the hurricane, and so things got spread out a little bit more. I was reading with no power over in Brevard County, so it became quite an interest. I don't think we had power for like 4 or 5 days. So it was an interesting process this year, but we did persevere. We had 2 meetings, and those meetings, I need you to know that they're very good meetings. Your staff comes prepared, they give the comments as to what their findings are. Each member has an opportunity to advocate to approve a charter application, so we're not just coming in looking for nothing but concerns. And then each of them vote anonymously to approve or deny the application. You have a good, your group is good, your team is good, it's key district staff, it's community members, it has diversity council representatives, charter representative, as well as I serve as the consultant. I think that it's beneficial to have an external evaluator, because when I look at the charter application, I only look at, I put the application beside me, and I just go look at all the questions and see whether or not they answered them sufficiently. I don't know the politics, I don't know any of the background, so I can basically give input strictly on the merit of the application. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that may not be so good. The Florida statutes guide us, and we have to really adhere to those statutes so that we're not out there just doing things without meaning without specific background, that we can support our decisions. We basically look at 4 different things. We look at the educational plan, we look at the organizational plan, and we look at the business plan. And there's several attachments now that are included that must be also looked at. Our job is to try to provide a quality process, but actually a fair, and I think that the team does a good job with that as well. This is the part that with the new board members, sometimes it's hard because some of the applicants are very innovative. Sometimes there's extreme student beneficial to having that particular school, but then we have to go back to the statutes and we have to keep that balance. The guiding principles are there, because you can turn a charter school down only for specific reasons. The curriculum plan, what does it look like? Is it improving student performance? What's the reading curriculum look like? What does the financial plan look like? Basically, the budget is probably the area that we spend a lot of time on, because in my experience, the budget is where a charter school can get into trouble. And so we try to really look at that. I work closely with your finance office, lots of emails, lots of discussions. We have a 4-step process. We basically, the evaluation team completes the process. The team makes recommendations to the superintendent. I'm doing the presentation today, and then the next step will be for the board to make a decision based on the superintendent's recommendation. And that meeting, I understand, is November 14th, so you'll be making a decision soon. One of our applicants withdrew, so we're only going to present to you 3 today. That's Grant Career and Technical Vocational High School. The good part is we give them a lot of detailed information regarding the application, and so many of them will go back and use that and then maybe apply again. We will see applications again in February with the new statutes, so we might be seeing some of these applications. The first one I want to talk to you about today is Bach Academy North. I need you to know that Bach Academy North cut and pasted a lot of their application from the original charter application, which took place in 2005. The application process and the even reform itself has changed significantly since that time. So that was a concern for us. It's really interesting as well. Melissa gave me a copy of the 2005 reasons for denial of the charter application. I had not seen it prior to putting this document together, and it's almost identical to the same concerns. So there were a lot of concerns addressed in 2005. It's my understanding that the board denied the application, but it was approved up at the state level during the appeal process. So we found a lot of the same concerns. I did not know that until after the fact. And so that was very interesting to us as well. One of the things that we need to pay attention to are the high-performing charter student statutes. And Mr. Gibson, the legal counsel for the school, while we were at the capacity interview, he said, we strictly follow the statutes, and we are doing what is replicating the school, which should give us a statutory right to the charter. So we looked at those statutes, and I don't think the school has a statutory right just because they say that they do. We looked carefully at the statutes, and that's what I'm gonna walk you through in the next few minutes. There's also a case right now. Melissa did work with Mr. Bridges and looking at those statutes. There's also a case that just came out October 4th, 2017, out of the 4th DCA that sided with Indian River County School Board because they were with 2 high-performing charter schools that they said failed to present a application that met all the statutes. So that's also something that's very recent. But when you're looking at a high-performing school, you have to be very careful, and you have to let these statutes guide you. You can't, only can you deny a charter application if the application materially does not comply with the requirements of the statute. Also, that's section 6, if it doesn't materially comply with section 9. And if the proposed charter school's education program does not substantially replicate that of the applicant or one of the applicant's high-performing schools. So that's important to look at and to remember as we go through. You also can deny an application if it's made a material or a misrepresentation or a false statement. And you also can deny it if the charter school's educational and financial management practices do not materially comply with the requirements of this section. So, let's look at that section. Here's what we had to look at as we were looking at whether or not it materially complied, this particular applicant. Does it demonstrate how the school will use the guiding principles? Does it provide a detailed curriculum plan? Does it contain goals and objectives for improving student learning? Does it describe the reading curriculum and differentiated strategies, I can't talk today, that will be used for students reading at grade level and those that are below grade level? And does it contain an annual financial plan for each year? And that's up for 5 years of the school that it's proposing to operate. So we had to keep those things in mind as we were reviewing this application. Does it disclose the name of each applicant, the governing board member, and the education services, and does it contain any additional information that the district may look at or ask for? A material noncompliance, the statute does define that for us. It's a failure to follow requirements or a violation of prohibitions applicable to a charter school application, which failure is quantitatively or qualitatively significant, either individually or when aggravated with other noncompliance. And that's an important statement for us to look at as we're reviewing this. Do we have enough concerns to say that it's non-compliant, either quantitatively or qualitatively? And then the other non-compliance is whether or not it's really replicating the school, and I think you've had that kind of case here before in the past, so you're familiar with that. So as we look at the strengths and weaknesses, we really do try to find strengths. The mission statement, the guidance, what I'm gonna do is just try to quickly go through some of these for you. This school is planning to implement a laptop program. It's going to provide students with just-in-time learning possibilities. It's really discusses implementing a digital science curriculum. It states it's going to have a vibrant arts curriculum. It does present an understanding of academic accountability and goals mandated by the state. It explains teacher training as an essential component of their behavioral management plan. It does state that it will be part of the Lake Wales Charter School System, which is a nonprofit corporation, 501c3 status. And it does provide details regarding the credibility and experience required of the Board of Trustees. The management and staffing, it addresses the class size, it looks at, gives a lot of different examples of what they're gonna do for professional development, and it states that parents will serve as mentors and be involved in community. The strengths too, it says that it's going to work with the City of Lake Wales to ensure that the school is permanently located at the town's historic school complex. I understand that there's been something that's happened since we made this slide, and that Melissa just told me about that, so we'll have to be looking at that. Transportation, it agrees to do transportation. It knows that it has to be part of the National School Lunch Program. It submits a safety plan that will pretty much ensure the safety of their students and their staff, and it describes how the finances will be managed. So those were the strengths that we were looking at. Some of the weaknesses that we were looking at. The mission, guiding principles, and purpose. The school states that the staff will work with each elementary school in Lake Wales to ensure what a baseline of achievement for each student is known before the child enters 6th grade. We were concerned that what right would a school have to go into a public schools database or any school's database and looking at the academic performance of a student prior to the application process. It makes us question whether or not that's a fair and equitable kind of process. It also states that its goal is to provide minority students access to the scholastic program. But as I looked at the Bach Academy SPAR reports, their school population is significantly lower than that of Lake Wales surrounding schools. And so we had a concern about that. One of the things that probably got a lot of attention is that it targets students. It has a target 1 and a target 2. And there is some recent legislation, which is 1023310DE, that says that you cannot use academic criteria for dismissal or for application of students. And we'll get into this a little bit about the target 1 and target 2. It also says that once it's accepted at Bach, it will be a student's being able to stay there will be predicated upon performance, behavior, and attendance. Again, that has changed in the statutes, but it was not removed because it was probably part of the old application. It does provide conflicting information regarding its student enrollment. I won't go into the details, but they did give us several different numbers. At the capacity interview, Mr. Gibson said that we're gonna be able to handle everything. As any child that wants to go to the school, living in Lake Wales Middle School, would be able to go and would there be a C. Because we were concerned about whether or not that school would be reflective of the community that it serves. And he basically said, we are going to be the community. But I looked at the submitted waiting list. There was 424 students on the waiting list, and I did an analysis of that. Only 26% of those students on the waiting list are actually from a Lake Wales charter school system. 14% of the students on the waiting list are from district schools within Lake Wales. 44% of those students on the waiting list are from district schools outside of Lake Wales, but within Polk County. And then there was 16%, and that was like homeschooled, Florida virtual school, and outside of Polk County. So we're not sure by looking at that, what was presented to us as the waiting list, if it's really going to give us the population as well as the.
Can you repeat that real quick?
Yeah, 26% are from, there were 424 names on the list. 26% on the waiting list are from Lake Wales charter school system. 14% are from district schools within Lake Wales. 44% of the students on the proposed waiting list are from schools outside of Lake Wales but still within Polk County. And 16% of those students on the waiting list are designated as other. That's homeschool, Florida virtual school, private schools, and schools outside of Polk County. Now, I did my very best. I went on and looked at every school to see whether it was private or public. I mean, there could be a little bit of error there, but I did go on and look at every school because they tell you which school that student is coming from. So there is a concern with the application as far as the getting a fair and equitable application process. That remains a concern for this team. The educational program design, again, they presented parts of the last application, and you could go side by side and look at the application for this time, the last application from 2005, and you could see where a lot of it was very similar. They only used a little over 200 words to describe the basic learning environment for the educational program design. They made statements like it would be premature to lock this proposed school into a program without seeking the opinions of the teachers. They made statements about other areas that they would have to, basically saying they weren't ready to put that curriculum together. But again, going back to, it was the 2005 application, by this point, they're saying as a high-performing school, you ought to be able to tell us what your programs look like, and you shouldn't have to say that you're gonna pull people, teachers together to give us what the application or the program's going to look like. Student performance, we don't have any measurable objectives for subgroups. So they say they're going to measure the overall effectiveness of the ESC population, but there were no subgroup measurements, so I don't know how we're gonna do that. It fails to provide the school's projected population of students of disabilities. The quote is, the number of students with disabilities cannot be determined at this time. Again, it's something that we think that they should be able to provide to us. They did not provide to us a worksheet for Bach Academy North, the revenue worksheet, so we couldn't go onto the revenue worksheet and look to see how many ESE students they were even proposing. They also, we found this interesting, there were statements saying that if they couldn't serve a student, that they would meet with the district and then they would find a proper placement. Well, we had discussion around the fact that if they're the LEA, then they would probably need to be taking care of their exceptional students. And that was a pretty good discussion. Also, in the English language learners, they addressed the English language learners less than one page. They didn't give us anything that was asked for as far as making our team member confident that they would serve those students. You know what, and they probably are doing a great job of serving their students, but we have to go on what they tell us in the charter application. The supplemental programs, they say they're replicating the school. If you look at the Bach Academy, they have football, they have cheerleading, cross country, basketball, volleyball, soccer, golf, track and field. But there is no budget for any of these sports, and these sports are not cheap, particularly some football and some of the other sports listed are not cheap. They said that it could be supported by the Lake Wales Charter Schools Foundation. There's no budget for any of the supplemental programming. The governments, they provide conflicting information regarding the composition of the Board of Trustees. They have different members listed on different pages, page 38, 41, and 42. The attachment M and the resumes is what I use to bring you this information. At the capacity interview, Mr. Gibson said they rotate out their board members, and as of the fiscal year, which means July 1, there will be more new board members. Also, on May 22nd in their board minutes, it says that they approved the new rotation of their returning and new board members. Well, August 1st was when the application was due, but the application does not reflect the current board members. Management and staffing, they don't give us a staffing plan for each of the years, which is a requirement of the application process. Human resources, there are numerous things that they don't address that the application, the model application requires. And it fails to describe any professional development, how it will be evaluated. And the application asks that you say how you're going to give PD to your teachers before school and how many hours actually during the school year. None of that was provided to us. We're also concerned about, again, the student enrollment. Some of the Target 1 group, if you didn't look at it in the application, the Target 1 group is college bound, possibly ESE gifted, demonstrates ability and leadership, participates in a wide range of activities, shows independence, values education, is goal-oriented, has stable social relationships with parents and peers, has family history of college attendance. They do have a goal 2, target 2, that's capability of attending college, demonstrates inconsistencies in scores, grades, and motivation. They have self-esteem, concept issues, questions of relevancy and the need of education, shows time on task, inconsistencies, possibly has participant in free and reduced lunch. None of these things are acceptable by law.
Well, you said that's not, I mean, like,
The law is
that's
very
not legal.
specific as to what you can target. You can target specific areas of the law, but this does, in our opinion, does not meet that requirement.
And that's 102.333, you said?
Yes, 6, section 6. It doesn't have a parent representative, which has been part of the law for some time now. Again, I think going back, it's just they did modify the old application. And we don't have concise information regarding the funding of the proposed facility. I told you already, we don't have a copy of their revenue sheet so that we can look to see what they're generating. They did include capital outlay for the first year for $30,000. They also included competitive federal implementation grant fundings at $187,500 and $162,500 respectively. This is a competitive grant. I do need to let you know, though, that Mr. Gibson did let us aware that they do have a $6 million reserve, so that like at any of their schools, if they don't have the money, they can provide it to the schools. The problem is, the statute says that they need to provide us with a solvent financial plan. And the startup plan fails to provide a lot of thoughtful and realistic things that are needed to implement a plan that are designed by the application process. The recommendation from the team is to deny. There's 3 recommending to approve, 7 to deny, and 1 recused himself. That's the longest one, so I apologize. Next, we're moving on to Navigator. And Navigator is one that we saw last year. Do you want to take questions now or at the end?
It doesn't have to be now, but at some point, can we get a list of who the votes were? At some point, like, or
They're
is it?
anonymous.
They're anonymous,
Alright.
always have
They're just little pieces of paper.
I have them tucked away in Merritt Island safe.
I do have a question kind of related to that though. The note said that there was one person that recused themselves. What's the reason for that? Why did they recuse themselves?
That person, I believe, was on the Lake Wales Foundation, Charter Schools Foundation. So
Wouldn't that have been a conflict right up front?
Did
Yeah.
review.
he didn't review that one.
We always have a member on the charter review committee that is from the charter community.
That is being reviewed?
Yeah, they would not vote on one that was related to their own school. But
And
we
that
do,
would be a recusal then, wouldn't it?
right.
Would it? Because they're really not eligible to vote.
Not,
There would be a conflict for them to vote, yes, sir.
I think you meant the wider
So,
charter community,
but
like
they-
somebody who's from a charter school of some
But,
sort.
but we have, the charter
vote
review
on
committee
it.
includes a representative from a charter school.
Or foundation in this case.
One of the schools, at least one of the schools will have someone there so that you have the charter perspective on the committee.
And he was actually the community representative.
Yeah.
And we do have someone that actually is a principal at a charter school that sits in on our meetings.
I think for better transparency for the public, it would be advisable for whoever that charter representative is to not be from any school that is submitting an application.
And in this particular case, she is not, she did not have
Right.
anything, this was the community representative.
I understand, but they're in
Yeah.
that neighborhood, and that neighborhood is the one submitting that proposal. And my suggestion would just be for better transparency to the public, that there not be any kind of conflict. Knowing that there is an application coming from a particular location, it would probably be clear to the public that there is no impropriety, that no one from that area be on the committee to have to recuse themselves.
Okay.
I,
Okay, Ms. Cunningham?
yeah, I disagree, and here's why. When the Charter Review Committee is formed, it's formed not knowing who is going to be up for applications at that time. So if, theoretically, if there was a charter school that we were looking at, like some of these others that are in other areas of the county, I feel that person should have the right and the opportunity to voice their concerns because they're part of it. So that's why I think this person did the right thing by recusing, or whatever the word is.
I mean, I agree with you that they
Yeah.
did the right thing. I'm just saying
Yes.
either that community that year doesn't submit an application, or that person is replaced by someone from a different part of the county that is a charter school representative, so that the public doesn't get the impression that there's someone on the committee that might have undue influence, because they're from that area.
But I believe it's a 3-year appointment, am I correct? So, isn't it? It's indefinite till that person rolls,
And
because I've had to replace mine, is why I'm asking, okay.
it's become a little bit more tricky because time was, we had a single charter application date deadline each year. You had to apply by August the 1st. The most recent status of the law is essentially created a rolling application, so people can submit anytime, and you never know who might submit an application.
Which presents a conundrum.
It does indeed.
It does.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're gonna proceed with Navigator.
Sorry?
Navigator?
Okay, yes, Navigator. Navigator was before us last year. And it's my understanding that they came and worked with a lot of district folks and took everything to heart that we were saying to them and made a lot of good changes to their charter application. They are looking at properties in the Davenport area. They gave us something specific, I think north of 27 and I-4, the Champion Gate area perhaps, I think they said at the capacity interview. They did give us a well-rounded educational program. They're looking at being a smart school. They are looking at things such as teach like a champion, reading reconsidered, and get better faster. They've invented a really good and innovative curriculum program. It's going to be exciting for the students that go there. They plan to implement NASA's design process, which is a way for problem solving, project lead the way. They do demonstrate their understanding of accountability. They have good goals, measurable goals. They share the possibility of incorporating an ESC resource room. In all my years of evaluating charter schools, I've never had an applicant say that they would look at doing an ESE room. Most of them just want to do the inclusion model and do not want to look at a separate facility. So that's to me was a very strong point for them. They did present a good ELL plan that was in compliance with all the state rules and evaluation criteria. For their school culture and discipline, they're going to incorporate strategies for the leader in need, which is a positive approach to discipline. Human resources, they are going to have public employees that can participate in the Florida retirement system so they can try to attract some of the most competitive and best teachers. Professional development, they're gonna report 2 weeks before the school starts for their professional development. They're gonna dedicate 6 out of 8 of their professional development days to training. They do present an application enrollment process, admissions process that we feel was fair and equitable. And they do have a lot of different array of activities to encourage parental involvement. They are going to do an RFP for their bus service, and so there was no doubt that they were gonna provide transportation to the kids. They do know that they have to, participate in the National School Lunch Program. They're looking for a contact with an independent provider. And they did provide a plan that ensures the safety of the students and staff. Financial management, they did provide sufficient information regarding the management oversight of their finances, and their startup plan was thoughtful and realistic. So they had a lot of good strengths in their charter application. We did have some concerns. Back to, they do too also have an array of activities after school, but there were no expensive support to support such activities. They did say in the capacity interview that they could get booster clubs and donations to try to support that. The governance, there is a conflict of interest. The charter school is going to contract with Compass Charter Schools for their education service provider. And when I looked at SunBiz, Compass Charter Schools has hand-bit AMBIT Holdings as the MGR. So when I looked that up, you see that you have Hand-Bit Holdings has Great Futures LLC and Bartle J. Azzarelli as their managers. Well, Mr. Azzarelli is also presented to as one of the founding board members. So there is a conflict of interest there. During the time of the capacity interview, they stated that they felt that Mr. Azzarelli's talents were more on the facility side, so he's actually not going to be a board member. But I have to tell you that as of yesterday, none of the documents have changed on SunBiz, and he is still listed, but the applicant says that they are going to remedy that. Another concern, considering they're gonna be a smart school, we had concerns whether or not, we didn't see the art and the music until year 3, any specific teacher allocations. But during the capacity interview, they shared with us, for example, you would have 5 units for 6th grade, they would only need 4 sections. The 5th teacher would be that special teacher. And so they basically told us it was embedded in the way that they did their staffing plan. We just couldn't see it. But all schools have to adjust their staffing. So they said that it's embedded in there. We just couldn't see it. They don't have a guidance counselor for the first year, even though they do reference this person in the narrative, and they don't have a gifted teacher until year 3 of the charter operation. The budget, this is a concern that we saw last year. There's a statement in there saying that in their ESP contract that grants managed by the company, that 3% of the total grant revenues received by the school would go to that management company. That's against the Green Book, according to your finance folks, so most grants won't allow you to do that. There's also a concern that there's a loan from $350,000 from Tortoise Credit Strategies. This is not on official letterhead, and what this basically is doing, it's basically talking to them about issuance of bonds. And so we know that if they don't have this $350,000, they would be insolvent, so they would have to find other funding if that Tortoise Credit Strategies fell through for them. We talked about the list of things that they've also said that they're going to have, but there was no budget to support it. We asked them about the food services because your finance department was concerned about that. They said that they used the school lunch calculator, which is part of the charter support unit. And we're seeing that a lot of the charter applicants are using this charter support unit, and the budget is causing them some problems, and so at least they're cognizant enough to go back and try to see where maybe those mistakes were. But they were using something that was provided by the state. So the recommendation from the charter team is to approve this particular application, 6 to approve, 5 to deny.
A couple questions. There were 5 folks who voted to deny. Did we get a sense of why they weren't interested in approving?
I'm trying to think back to our discussion. I think some of it was, there were 3 areas in which I can pull it out for you, but I think there were 3 areas. It was the budget, was the staffing, and I can't remember the 3rd area. I believe because that letter from Tortoise, credit was not it wasn't a legal obligation, and the finance folks felt that it would not be a solvent budget if the $350,000 was not received. And the staffing was a concern. I think they felt a little bit more comfortable after the capacity interview, but it's not something where we can just say 3 art teachers, 4 art teachers. It seems to be embedded in all their sections, and we just couldn't pull that out.
It shows governance on here too.
Yeah, governance too, with the conflict of interest, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hutek, can I apologize, I meant to ask this question, it's related to Bach Academy. It says in here that there were 2 letters of support, it says please read, and I didn't see them in here, did I miss them? And you don't have to find it now, if you can make it available, because it says in here, please read the letters of support, but I couldn't find them in here.
For Bach Academy?
For Bach Academy.
Okay.
I mean,
I'll make sure.
I'd like to see those. It
In
was
the,
on
in
it's
the
on page
application,
2
yeah.
Of the valuation?
Yeah,
of the evaluation.
Thank you.
I think there were 4 and against, and it said, please read both, and there weren't, if I remember right, there weren't any letters to go see, that I could find.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, say it again.
No, you're right, it seems like there was 1 for each side, like, or a couple for each side.
That's from the Diversity Council team. So I'll have to get with them to see what they were talking about. I was
Thank
gonna
you.
say, that doesn't sound familiar, but they pull their team together and they review it separately and then they bring their findings to the team. Thank you for bringing that up. Ready to go on?
Any other questions on Navigator that were, okay?
Our children's
Well,
prep.
our children's.
We've seen our children's prep before. I have to say that this was probably their better application. I do think that at least we could read it and have some understanding as to what their proposed curriculum looked like. In the past, we had difficulty with that task. So I do want to commend them. I do think that they did work to try to make some changes. They are very passionate. We know that. They're very passionate about their kids. That remains the same. This time they did align their educational program and their school's mission, and they seem to respond to the needs of their targeted population. They did describe research utilized in designing their educational program. They are looking at, they're choosing core and supplemental programs that are specific for at-risk kids and low-performing students. They provide valid and reliable assessments this time. They also explain to help, that they're trying to build a culture, a positive culture, and share some of the things that they're gonna do to try to do that. They're gonna do their Special Olympics, which, is something they're very proud of. Their governance, they did give us a detailed governance chart this time, and, actually, they do articulate the need for a highly qualified school leader. There's not one that has already been chosen, or at least it didn't seem that way, even though I do think that the person we spoke to at the capacity interview was hoping to be the principal. The human resources, they're gonna have public employees as well with the Florida retirement system. They do address background screening and those kind of requirements. They do stipulate that each of their teachers are gonna do 100 hours in professional development. That's a lot of hours. That's the most we've seen in this round of applications. And their student recruitment, they do present an array of activities and events to try to target their student population. They want to have a family-school partnership and gave us some ideas as to what that's going to look like. They stipulate that their existing facility will require minimal renovations. They know that they need to qualify for the National School Lunch Program, and they did present a plan to us that will reasonably ensure the safety of their students and their staff. And this time their startup plan was really thoughtful. Before it was like a cut and paste, and it wasn't in chronological order or anything like that. So this year, they did present a good, thoughtful, and realistic implementation plan. We still have some concerns. Our concerns go back to staffing. We didn't see adequate staffing for physical education and their art and music. When we talked to the person at the, and I apologize that I don't remember her name, at the capacity interview, they said, well, they could take the 2 AP positions and perhaps do some restaffing. But that might present a problem because their AP positions are AP of support staff and operations and AP of positive behavior supports, early childhood, infant, and toddlers. In the organization chart, these 2 APs have very specific roles and duties. So if they move that around, that would change the leadership, what the leadership might look like. Oh, thank you, I've got her name, thank you. Fails to address services for gifted and talented students. And it implies that they wouldn't serve all students with disabilities. And we were a little curious about that as why they, who they couldn't serve as, since they're gonna be in an exceptional education school. And they said that if they had a tier 6 student with extreme behaviors, that perhaps that would be a student that would need to come back to the district or to have a different placement. The other thing, though, they did say that I do need to explain is that they did talk a lot about mainstreaming kids back into the public school system, and that was one of their goals. The English language learners, they didn't project any students on their, for ESOL, on their FLDOE revenue sheet. So we're not sure what their ESOL population's gonna look like. They also didn't give us any kind of definitions of like what happens if the child has an expellable offense, particularly since they are exceptional education, what is going to happen to those particular students. That was a concern for the team as well. The governance. The governance was probably our biggest issue. It states that it's gonna share a facility with the children of our Children's of Winter Haven, which is a nonprofit 501c3 corporation. And that particular school is going to remain on the campus as a 9 through 12 school. They're going to lease space from our Children's Prep. Also, during that time with our capacity interview, we asked, okay, they're gonna have our Children's Rehab, which is gonna provide the services, the therapies for the kids. Would our Children of Winter Haven also receive therapies? I mean, our Children of Winter Haven also receive charities from our Children's Rehab. It gets very confusing, got it. And that answer was yes. As they were explaining to us how it worked with medicated billing, they were saying that within the same classroom, a child could be receiving services that he necessarily is going to get billed for those services, but other child surrounding them perhaps would benefit from someone else's services. And we got a little bit concerned about the way they were discussing how Medicaid services were gonna be billed, because they're projecting over $700,000 of their revenue coming from Medicaid. So there was some really big concerns about how all those were gonna mix. We asked about commingling of funds, and they basically said it was up to the accountant, and that each school would have to make sure. Because you've got a private school and a public school in the same facility. They're sharing rehab services. The private school is paying the public school for leasing space. We didn't see any clear and defined parameters in place that made us feel comfortable. I guess that would be the best way to establish that, or to say that. They didn't say how they were going to evaluate all that 100 hours of professional development. They did even talk about Title I, but they didn't even present themselves as a Title I school. Student recruitment, they present some eligibility for student enrollment for criteria. And one of it was the applicant's family must be willing to consider our Children's Rehab Center as a primary provider of your child's physical, occupational, or speech and language therapy services. We weren't comfortable with that you're saying in order to come to this public school, you're going to have to say that you would take services from the rehab, our Children's Rehab Center, so we saw some conflict of interest there as well. There was only 4 letters of support. We were looking for evidence of community support. It didn't give us a facility site plan to evaluate It did underestimate the cost of setting up the portables by $20,000, which impacts their budget, and that was taken right from their narrative. It gave us some conflicting information on the number of kids that they were going to transport, stating that it anticipates 85%, but it only projected 9% in ridership. Probably another big issue of concern is that they project 254 level 4, and level 5, 255 students, 30. That's a lot of money. That's a total of $520,977. If you just have one of those 254, 255 children not come to your school, you're talking anywhere from $14,000 to $22,000 that you would lose in revenue. They do have district staff there looking at the family services plans, taking into IEPs. They do know they have 17 kids that will probably fit into the level 4 and level 5 slots, but 17 is a long way from 30 that they are projecting. So that could impact their budget tremendously. There is a conflicting amount regarding what they're gonna pay their contractor, what it says in the narrative, and then what it says in the actual contract. They don't have, they include IDA funding, which they are allowed to have the first year, but the district does not have to pay them for 5 months, according to statute, from the time the school opens, and so you're talking another $300,000 that might be a cash flow issue for them. The conflicting information as far as the children are rehab, and the contract is on the left side is what it states in the actual contract for Children's Rehab Center, but when you look at the budget, that is what's budgeted for professional technical services. So we were trying during the capacity interview to try to figure out that gap, and we were not successful in doing that. And I talked a little bit, we did discuss commingling. I mean, we just couldn't put everything in its nice little spot to make us think that everything would work without any commingling of funds. There is also conflicting information whether or not our Children's Rehab Center is gonna do the back office services. We've gotten conflicting information on that, and that's a repeated concern. So the Charter Review Committee has recommended to the superintendent to deny. There was 11 to deny, 0 to approve. That was fast and furious.
That it was. Yes, Ms. Ellis?
Because I've visited, it's the same school that is private right now. And
Yes.
so I've visited it several times, and I'm concerned that a concern is that there's no provision for gifted or talented students, because I wouldn't think that gifted students would be applying to this school. Can you give me the context?
Well, there are many times in which you might have, I mean, in my career, particularly boys, you could have a boy that would have SLD, maybe on the autistic spectrum, and still be gifted. I mean, you can have
Yeah.
some kids that have processing issues but are gifted. And so, that's feasible for, you see it particularly in boys, I'm
Yeah.
not sure, in elementary school, but that is a feasible, concept, that you could need some gifted services.
Madam Chair?
How many times has the school applied over has it been 3 or 4 years?
I thought it
Is
was,
this the fourth year?
4 or 5.
I thought I'd read it 5 times.
See that?
Okay,
But
so
they
each
withdrew.
each time it
Oh, they
appears
withdrew.
like they're improving?
Yes,
From
and-
last year, they
I think-
improved to
Yes.
this year?
and I think they've got different parties engaged now. Melissa, Miss Callens, Dr. Callens, seems to be very much involved and passionate. Melissa can tell you more about her. She got engaged in writing the application, works at the school currently, and her heart has been very much touched by these particular students, and she's just trying to figure out how to become a charter school. I know Melissa's had a lot of conversations with her.
I'm just wondering, I know that last year, I believe you all reached out to them and said that you would be willing to have a conversation with them if they wanted to reapply, and I'm sure that they did that this year. And so I think that the service is much needed, but quite naturally, everything has to be in order. So maybe you guys can just keep working with them, and maybe the magic number might one day hit.
It has gotten better.
Yes.
It has gotten better. I must commend, Dr. Kellens. The application's gotten better. There's just some things that are just hard to ignore, in light of probably recent events at the school as well. May have had something to do with the team's decision. The good part is I'm not here, so I don't read your papers and know any of that. I can just tell you what I can pull out of your application.
Right. I can also just tell you that Dr. Callens comes from Tampa. Her and her husband has been, and when she shared with the board a few weeks ago, when she shared her application, they have served in ministry for many, many years. And so she has really no roots to Polk County, but she was, after getting her doctorate, and she's a speech pathologist, she was really drawn to this type of program. So she really didn't know any of the back history of it, started in it just kind of unaware, and has worked through this process, I think, brilliantly. And we have had many, many conversations. She's been in my office a lot. I would say that her heart is in the right place, her passion's in the right place. Unfortunately, the application is just not where it needs to be. She is absolutely 100% sure that she wants to bring it forward again if it is denied. So, you know, I mean, she's still gonna move forward no matter what.
Mr. Wilson.
So I agree also, they're very much needed services in our community, and it's clear they have made progress with the application, but this is a question for Mr. Bridges. I don't mean to put you on the spot, and if you don't have a ready answer, I understand, maybe you could think about it. Given their well-publicized legal issues, what is the probability or likelihood that we could be drawn into that? I have concerns about that.
No.
That is certainly something to be concerned about, and the answer is, at this point, I don't know. It's a separate entity, and I would anticipate, you can never prevent someone from suing everybody in town in an effort to catch somebody. But I think right now, the litigation and the efforts in that direction are at the entity, not the school district. But it's certainly something to be aware of, be concerned about. And we also have to balance the extent to which it's fair or not to consider that in evaluating an application.
Right, and that's where I would look to you for guidance.
Yes, sir, and we'll certainly have that discussion. I think the application needs to be evaluated on its merits. Right now, the whatever's going on out there, I don't think is related to the application, and it certainly has not been resolved yet. I think it's the resolution that might be more important than the allegation. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Sellers?
The Medicaid billing and funding seems to be a major, big, huge piece. And is there, while it was unclear, is there a path to making that clear? I mean, are there recommendations so that it's a possibility that that can be made clear?
Medicaid is very complicated, obviously, and when you start getting into charter schools, billing Medicaid and how that affects what we do as a district, there's a lot of fine lines because you have kids who can get services based on their private therapy versus what they get for educationally relevant therapy, where they get it during the day, who their service provider is. And some of the conflicts that we saw with this school in particular was that the service providers they proposed to use work for the rehab company, but we're gonna provide educational services, so it just, and that's about as much as I can comment without trying to explain the whole rest of it.
We couldn't, a definitive line, we just couldn't find it. Yeah.
But I mean, that would definitely be a recommendation that
Yes.
they need to fix, if they want to reapply, they've got to get that straightened out. Because I could see that being a huge problem, and maybe being a problem for us if
Absolutely.
something happens.
Especially with the $700,000.
Yeah, no, when you said the
Yes.
amount, that's
Yes.
why I,
Okay, Ms. Cunningham?
Yes, and going back and looking strictly at the application, I mean, clearly, only 8 areas were met totally, and 11 were either partially met or does not meet standards. So looking at that conclusively to me says, it's not even one or two issues or in the news or any of that, it's clearly in the application, we need to have the most appropriate information in order to move forward. I mean,
And the good news is that some of those did not meet, moved over to the middle, and so
Right.
there's progress.
right, there's progress,
Yes.
but we're not to the point yet.
Yes.
You know, and from what I understand, you know, the school continues to operate, it's just that they want to be a charter. So I don't want people to think that if the application is denied, that the children will not have services because they will continue as a private school instead of as a charter school.
And if I may, I think Mr. Bridges made a good point. I strictly present to you based on the merits of the application, as an external evaluator, and I don't want, he had a good point, I don't want anyone to think that I don't even know the details as to what is happening, so it certainly didn't influence the decision of the team.
Yes, sir, Mr. Wilson.
I'm absolutely certain of that, and let the record clearly reflect that was just a question that I asked based on what we see in the papers. And had nothing to do with your work or the charter school committee's work at all.
Very good. Anybody else? All right, Mrs. Mace, thank you very much. Ms. Brady,
Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much.
We are within a minute of being on time for the next agenda item number 5, which is a 1:50 break, so your timing is perfect. So I guess we'll take 10 minutes. Take 10 minutes and we'll come back and do it again.
Come on now.
Okay, we're gonna move on to agenda item 6. This is State Board Top Turnaround Option Plans. Regional Assistant Superintendent Tony Bellamy will provide an update on the Florida Department of Education turnaround options for 2018-19, and he's got Dr. Akes and Ms. Barnes to assist him.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, to give a little background on why we're here today, after meeting last Friday with our Regional Executive Director for the state, Ms. Gail Sitter, we held a conversation on some options that we want to share with you, so to make you aware of what we're up against. I will tell you, it is very vague and uncertain on how this process is going to roll out. When we tried to get clarity on it, they didn't know themselves. But Ms. Berg felt it, and Mr. Hutek felt it in the best interest just to make you aware of what the options are. And so that's what we're going to do today. So I'll just let you know from our standpoint, we know very little as well, and we have tried to get clarification by talking to the Red and some of the things that we're doing. Here's what I would like to share with you to start out with, is that this year, we had 8 plans to go to the board, and I'm certain that you guys already know, but I like to say it publicly because of what we went through last year in trying to get the plans passed. But thanks to the committee, which is Ms. Barnes, Dr. Akes, and Maria Longa, and myself, all 8 were passed. And so we were thrilled to receive that information, and Ms. Sitter shared that information with us when we met with her on Friday. So there's 3 options that are on the table that was discussed with us that we will have to make a decision on out of the 6 schools, and those 6 schools are Garner Elementary, Bartow Middle, Kathleen Middle, Griffin Elementary, Lake Marion Creek Middle, Lake Alfred Polytech Middle. So there are 4 middle schools and 2 elementaries that we will have to make a decision on which direction we want to go in. So in case they don't make the letter grade of a C.
Can you get those schools again, please?
Yeah, you went fast.
One more time on the schools.
Yes, I'll go back through them again. That's Garner Elementary, Bartow Middle, Kathleen Middle, Griffin Elementary, Lake Marion Creek Middle, and Lake Alfred Polytech Middle. Those will be the schools that we will have to make a decision, and that's, Ms. Bird will make the decision, and I'm assuming the process will be this way. I'm gonna read you the options, and once she makes a decision, then the planning process comes into place, because Dr. Akes has had an opportunity to speak with some other districts, but it's different from district to district, and they can't give us, I guess, a good, clear picture on what it is going to look like. So it's based on how whatever company we choose, if we go that route, or whatever the option is that Ms. Bird will choose, then that's where we will begin our work to do the investigation on how to implement it successfully in case they don't make it to the seat. And that's why they're asking us to do it now in advance, so that if we decide don't make it, we will have implemented everything to be ready to start in August. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, going back a year, we've been very successful, especially in some of my schools, to be able to bring those grades up. We provided interventions, we provided additional resources, and when I visited my schools towards the end of last school year, the administration, they were so thankful and commended Dr. Akes and others for what they were doing in our schools. So my question is, having that now going forward to this next group, my question is, are we able to continue to replicate what we found last year that worked in these schools? Are we putting in the same, I'm just asking, same interventions, same type of things to try to raise them up? Because we've been successful now at it, you know, to a wonderful degree. So that's kind of where, we may not have to be there is what I'm saying. I understand we have to look at the if, I get that. But overall, we've been doing some great things in our schools. So are we doing that now for these 6?
We are.
Okay.
One is that I will go to the leadership piece.
Yes.
We know Garner has a new principal. Griffin definitely has a new principal. It looks totally different from last year. We have continued the same support in
Yes.
Kathleen Middle and Lake Alfred.
Okay.
I am,
Lake Marion Creek.
well,
We have a new administrator as well,
absolutely.
and additional support has been
But
put into.
in place like the others had last year,
Yes.
because I heard so many compliments. They just
yeah.
couldn't believe how the district has reached out and supported the students, the kids, and the administration. So that's really my question, because then I feel more confident that we're gonna be on the right track and maybe not have to have this conversation.
And I totally agree with you. We feel good as we visit, and our goal is to stay in the school so that we have our
Right,
hands on
hands-on.
the pulse of what's going on within the school. Yes, sir.
Dr. X, I know you comb the data and you're a number cruncher. What is your sense of where we are with these schools? Do we get a sense that we're gonna be okay? Do you sense there could be some problems with some of them?
For these schools that we've talked about, that Mr. Belton has shared with you, as he alluded to, explicitly stating, those structures are in place in these schools. And those teachers and principals and students are working very hard. So, you know, we feel very confident that we're going to make the corner with these schools. Unfortunately, due to the timeline, we've got to, some steps have to be made now, more behind the scenes, but Ms. Bird felt like that we needed to be very, very transparent with all the stakeholders and what was getting ready to happen for us, the work that more or less Mr. Belling and myself were going to have to do to get things ready. So that was the rationale for bringing it to the school board workshop today.
But you feel as comfortable as you can, feel as confident as is reasonably possible that we're making progress.
Absolutely, if not, it would be a different discussion, and you would have evidence that other things were needing to take place.
I will tell you, oh, I'm sorry.
And Mr. Townsend?
I need to back up for a second. You mentioned 8 plans that had all been approved. 8.
Yes,
Which schools are those?
those schools are Crystal Lake Elementary, Stanbar Middle,
Okay.
Arbondale Central Elementary, Walter Caldwell, Gibbon Street, Mulberry Senior High School, Kathleen Senior High School, and McLaughlin Middle School.
So,
So the 8.
were these other 6 rejected? Is that, like, what is the relationship of?
So last year, you heard a lot about the 5 schools.
Correct.
And then there was another group of 8 right behind them.
Okay, so this is these 5.
Correct.
Okay.
And there was another group of 8 behind them.
Correct.
So the 4 from that third group and the 4 from the second group, plus the 2 that did, that's where we are.
Okay.
Right. So, that's why I'm glad you brought that up, and we had, you mentioned you wanted to know what school, because of the fact that what we went through last year of the state board, and this year, we didn't even have to go present. We gave the information to Ms. Sitter, and she had some questions who the commissioner had questions on. We quickly wrote addendums and clarified the information and got it back to them like within a day's time frame. And when they held a meeting on October 18th in Jacksonville, all 8 were approved.
So these are preparatory in case we have to do this.
So I'm gonna read you just so that you are aware of the options, and Ms. Bird will have to make that decision on which option she would like to go with for these 6 schools. There is a piece there that says I can select a different option for each of the schools. So it doesn't, necessarily have to say, and I'm glad you brought that point up about, how do we feel about where the schools are? And we feel good about them at this point in the game. So the first option is close the school, transfer students to a higher performing school, and monitor the students for a 3-year period. So that's closing the school and then moving all the kids out to a higher performing school. And then we are responsible for monitoring their success for 3 years. The second option, and if you would like for us to send this information to you, we can. That is not a problem. We can get it to you. But today's presentation was just to sort of front load you that she will have to make a decision on these options that they presented to us. And we just found out Friday when we held our meeting with Ms. Sitter. Second option, close the school and reopen the school as 1 or more charter schools with a governing board that has demonstrated record of effectiveness. And then the final one is contract with an outside entity that has demonstrated record of effectiveness to operate the school. This may include a district-managed charter school in which all instructional personnel are not employees of the school district, but are employees of an independent governing board comprised of members who did not participate in the review or approval of the charter. So those are the 3 options that across the state of Florida that they have given every district if they don't make it.
Yes, sir, Mr.
I
Wilson.
find it interesting that they would suggest that one of the options is to close the school, move students to another school, but then we have to monitor those students.
For 3 years.
Where on the other hand, if we convert it to a charter school, then the school's evaluated on its own, we don't monitor those students any longer. That's stunning stuff.
Ms. Sellers?
I'm confused. So the other 5 and the other 8, this doesn't have to happen to them because they already have, am I hearing this right? They have state-approved plans?
So what happened is last year, these schools had state-approved plans as well. So they had really 2 years. So last year was their first year. This is it. This is their second year. The other group that we called out the names, the Crystal Lake, the Stanma, this is their first year.
Okay.
If they don't make the C or better, this time next year, we would be back with their names before us.
Okay, it just seems like we skipped up because this 6, it seems like it's an odd grouping.
Well, this their second
So-
year.
So they have until the end of this year, right?
That's it.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Okay.
The end of the school year,
They have until the grades come
out for this, but the
However,
17,
the
18 school
state
year.
is maintaining that you must pick your option and start working on what you're going to do within their timelines, because if in fact a school does not make it, in August, they have to
They're ready to
open up
start.
in one
I see.
of these 3
Options.
options.
That is
And
correct.
so, Ms. Sellers, for you, what you heard a lot of last year was, we heard about the 5, okay? And then the 8
What's coming behind that?
were
Was
put
behind,
on
right.
plans too,
Okay.
okay? They all had plans last year, so we actually had 13. Hey, I hope my math is good. 13.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, on plans. Of the 13 that were on plans, 6.
Oh,
Did
okay.
not.
Now I get.
And so now we're working with them.
Because it's their second year, so therefore now, because they're still in the D status or F status, we now have to implement one of these options to begin the school year if they don't make it.
Can I hear what, because I see night and day differences that have happened at Bartow Middle. I mentor there. But I also see a lot of support that many children need. Not really necessarily Bartow Middle's. These children, this is middle school, they came with these great needs, academically, emotionally, and I see teachers working their hearts out. Great teachers. My granddaughter's there. She has great teachers. She's loving it. But, so I'm concerned because I don't know how these teachers can work any harder. I don't know how you can get any better, more dedicated teachers. But at the same time, because I work with some of these kids, I know the needs. So how are we giving them the support? Because I would say that these kids need a lot of support. It's not, some of them need a lot of support. And how are we doing that this year so we don't have to do one of these extreme measures?
So, Ms. Sellers, in response to your question, that same concern, I met with the Commissioner and the Chancellor, not yesterday, but last Monday, and superintendents that are in the same position in districts were there when I met with her, and expressed that same concern. We think the timing on this is very, very unfortunate. The original timing that we were told was we would start this process in January. But because of 7069 and everything that's come into play, we do have to start the process of making those selections. And I think what Mr. Wilson was asking for was an affirmation that these schools are moving forward, and they are. I will tell you that the teachers are working their hearts out the best for everything that it's worth. We're putting supports in there as, you know, as needed on a daily basis. We have that Title I money that we've leveraged there. We've got school improvement money that we've leveraged there. Bartow has a SIG grant that he's leveraged there, and we've purchased some more supports like that and additional counselors there. So in every way that we can support these schools, we're doing that. The other thing that, and I know y'all realize this, that really hurt this situation was the moving of those teachers that had an unsat bound. And the conversation that we had there that day, you know, she's exercising the right to do that. But it did disrupt the flow of those particular schools, specifically Bartow. But that's where they're at. I will tell you that they have worked very hard, and I got to really give accolades to HR. At these schools, there's very minimal openings right now. And it's because they've done some targeted hiring and selecting and been very aggressive about it. But the confidence is there for these. But the process did accelerate when 7069 come into play. That's why in your mind, we were still kind of a year out, but that's not the case anymore. There's not a waiting year for this. As it looks right now, by the 27th, the superintendent has to submit a selection. Now, that's just really a one-pager. After the superintendent does that submission, by November the 15th, we've got to turn in what we call a top plan for this, which is a pretty detailed plan of how we're going to do that. And then by the end of January, we've got to have contracts in place to do this. As Mr. Bellamy said, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and I thank God for that. Because I think that, you know, y'all working together, talking to the superintendent, it'll be a school-by-school decision. I will note this, that really Kathleen Middle and Lake Alfred, we were allowed to exercise an extra year. And we wrote a letter to get that extra year. But the commissioner was very, very specific that, clear, you better have a really compelling reason before you try to get that letter up here again. Now, you mentioned, Ms. Cunningham, that we got a record of moving them. Y'all are moving them, okay? So we're very confident about moving the schools, but behind the scenes, and this is what I think the three of us really try to do, is we try to get all these things taken care of for schools. These are things that are taking place that school principals don't even realize what we're trying to do, and they don't have to worry about that. They worry about school, and that's one of the things that Ms. Bird is very specific about. We'll start working on the nuts and bolts of how this could look. In the contracts that we would be looking at, or the companies that we would look at, where you're looking at a district managed charter or an outside entity, one of the things that we would like to explore is if we do move the grade, then we could have an opt-out clause. So that we wouldn't have to exercise that contract, and we would work with the attorney to get that in place.
Because if we don't, and we sign the contract, and the school moves and we don't have an opt-out clause, we will have to be committed to the contract for 3 years.
So we're looking, we've met with, I've talked 2 different times to Miami-Dade and another district that has district-managed charter schools. Melissa Brady and I have been talking and trying to work out the mechanics of how we would do that. Ms. Bird has been in conversation with a couple of different companies, and we're looking at what management companies that would be amenable to what we would want to do. Really looking at it school by school, but also realizing that we got school today, and we got school till May, and we got to make a difference with these kids and with these principals today. So that's what we're trying to do. Yes, ma'am.
So let's say school X moves appropriately and becomes a C, and there's the opt-out clause. We've done all the whichever one you choose.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and there's the opt-out. So
Yes,
hey,
ma'am.
I'm a C, I don't fall in any of these options. What if next year my grade falls to a D?
Okay, what would happen is the process just starts over.
Just starts over?
Yes, ma'am.
But I'm not back to where I have to do one A, B,
Yes,
or
ma'am.
C as I call it. Right, we would just start over, as in I would still have the 2 years, or no, I would be immediately, that's my question.
Yeah, I had that question.
Oh, so there is no starting the process over,
That's really the big change from
Ooh.
7069. You're not going to continue to be given 2 years, 3 years to get it together.
Did 7069 do that? That
Yes.
came as part of, so
Yes.
how does that fit into the suit?
That's insane, is what it is.
But we don't know.
Okay. I
You know, I mean,
but
it's,
it,
you know, I
if
mean,
it-
there are, 7069 is sort of the gorilla that has its fingers in every single educational pie there is. You know, the gravamen of the suit is largely has to do with your taxing ability and with your ability to enter into meaningful negotiations to create charter schools. There's an awful lot of material in 7069 that the lawsuit doesn't touch. And I don't know that this
There is a
would be
chart
part of that.
within DOE which basically shows the movement. And in 2020, school year 2020, anyone that falls, it's automatic choice. So we're at 17, 18 right now, and I get off the list, great. And then 18, 19, I fall back in. I might have the option of that one extra year, which would be 19, 20. But come year 2021, anyone that falls in, you automatically have to make those choices.
One of these three, if that's still what legislation
We
is
should-
showing.
we should close them and immediately make it a political question. This is the Neil Cumby closure. This is the Kelly Stargell closure. This is the Rick Scott closure. That Tallahassee is making this be done. We should close them and hang that around their necks for the next six months. You know, I think that is the only way to get anyone's attention here. If we're going to do their dirty work for them, it's going to be a long, bloody period. I think we should close them and say we don't want to close them. Your legislators, the people you go to church with, the people who are in your community are screwing you as hard as they can, and go talk to them. And you know, that's one guy's point of view. Sorry.
Go with Ms. Fields and then Mr. Wilson and then Ms. Sellers, please.
The timeline, Dr. H, you gave, you said that Ms. Jackie has to make a decision by Friday?
Yes, ma'am.
Friday, right?
To the 27th, we have to submit, it's a two-page document, but it will be a choice for each school. By November the 15th, the three amigos sitting in front of you will have to do detailed plans for the schools.
And then I guess my other question is, I know you don't have the answer today, but resources will be needed as the decision is made. And so I would imagine that you guys will be working on that, and that at some point in time, you're gonna have to come back to the board so that you will know that we are in support
Yes, ma'am.
for the resources
ma'am.
that you all need
Yes,
to
ma'am.
make these
So
schools successful.
And when we come back, we would then bring, because we would have the options, so, and we would have worked out the details. And then it would be now a discussion with the board attorney and the outside entity attorney, working the logistics out for some of that. And so we would come back and have that discussion.
Thank you.
And the superintendent has been working with Melissa Brady, who has also worked with numerous other counties around the state to make some pictures, to get some pictures of what some of those other options may look like as well.
It is
So-
very much a bicycle that we are throughout the state assembling while we write it. And you can ask other districts, you know, what they're doing and what it looks like, but it's, everybody's cutting it out of whole cloth.
Yep, Mr. Wilson?
So at the risk of pulling the scab off of the sore, last year when we went through this, my concern was with the contract. And as I recall, there was no opt-out, so I'm glad that we're looking at that this year. I believe that Superintendent Burt had some luck in restructuring that contract with the service provider. I think she did a wonderful job of that. That was not built in last year, and that was a great concern to me. In addition to that, as Mrs. Sellers just talked about so eloquently, and I agree completely, notwithstanding any other political issues, to move these schools forward, they need help. And I don't think, in my opinion, training teachers is the answer. I think getting the resources into the classroom to support the teachers is the answer, and I think there's a very important distinction there. So this year when we do that, if we could move away from providing training to our teachers and instead provide resources for our teachers, I think I'm much more willing to spend money on that. I think that's where our money needs to go, whatever those resources are. And you know what they are, they know what they are, but telling our teachers you need additional training, it just doesn't resonate with me.
I'm gonna comment on that, because we're currently in.
Excuse me a moment, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's what the other contract did. And let's be perfectly and abundantly clear about that. That was my headache with it. That's what it did. It trained our teachers. Are you in agreement with that?
Yes, so here's where I'm gonna go with this, is because we're currently doing instructional reviews in school. And the conversation that we're having with principals is that we took our eyes off the prize, and the prize is the students. And it was more laid on, as you said, teacher training, professional development, and all we gotta do for them. Now, I'm preaching the piece of bring me student work. I need to see what students are doing. I need to see students engage. I need to see students and their activities. So it's centered around the students. Now, we help you support the students. That's what our goal is. And that's why we're pushing that extremely hard in all of our schools, about concentrating on student work.
Okay, Ms. Sellers?
Okay, I just have a question. Choice 2, where it says you close the school and then virtually give it over to a charter. My experience, are there successful charters, not no startup, a charter that's deemed themselves successful? Are there a number of these that are out here willing to come in and
So-
take over these? Because a lot of our high-performing charters don't deal with the challenges that we are seeing in these schools.
In that particular option, with the superintendent and I've talked about with Mr. Utek and Ms. Brady, was that we'd like to do some more investigation of doing a district managed charter in that situation. And if you pair that along with our track record of being able to improve schools, we think that we can get that option through. I know that Mr. Bellamy expressed that it is left very open and very vague right now, and at this point, that isn't actually to our benefit. Because as we go through this, what the commissioner, what the state board, and what the legislation is looking for is can school districts come up with plans and strategies to self-correct situations and exercise these 2 or 3 options. So the vagueness in this particular case is actually going to be to our benefit. But they are going to be looking to have to create the outside charter and everything else, but it would be a district managed charter. And Dade County has them also, Osceola has district managed charters also.
Ms. Cunningham?
Yeah, to piggyback on Mr. Wilson's comment, I too agree that that's the direction, because that's what I thought I witnessed at my schools last year, was not just the professional development for teachers, but I saw individuals brought in as additional resources for the teachers and for the students that would work with them. That's what I saw, and that's what it was, what I was told, because I'm not an educator, that's what I was told was becoming very effective in turning some of those schools around and helping those kids exactly on point. So when I said that earlier, that's really what I meant, not so much let's go to another class and learn how to teach it 15 other different ways. No, I'm talking bringing the resources, human beings in to assist, and it was very positively received, and the kids did well. That's what I was saying. So I concur with your comments, because it made a huge difference in at least the 2 of mine from everything I heard.
Okay, Mr. Harris, and then Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Townsend.
Hypothetical.
Yes.
If we were to go down the road of the schools being converted to charter schools, some charter schools have this image, rightly earned or not, that they turn kids out on a rather routine basis and send them back, quote unquote, to their zone schools because of academic problems, non-participation by parents, behavior problems, whatever. If we went that route and we had a kid or multiple kids caught up in that, where would they go?
For a district managed charter, it has been my experience that you wouldn't pursue that we'd still continue to look at the zones that they're in. You know, you can do this a couple of different ways, but the closer you keep it up under the district's umbrella, you are able to provide the same benefits for your staff there. You're still able to provide busing, the food, the whole 9 yards. That would be something, Mr. Harris, that I don't think anybody that I know in this situation here would advocate for at all. The students that you have are the students that you have, and you need to make a difference with them. So your point is well taken.
And again, I don't mean to bang this drum forever, but as I read through that contract, it was about training, and that was my great concern. Now, there were some schools, and apparently there were, that said, you know, that's not what we're gonna do with our money. We're gonna do the right thing, and good for them. But not all the schools did that. I know, listening to some of our teachers and principals, in some instances, they followed the contract, and it was just more training for teachers. So I hope we can get on board as a board and agree that what we want to do with those funds is make sure that teachers have the resources they need, because clearly that's effective. There's no question about that. So thank you for your leadership in doing that, and hopefully we can communicate that with all of our schools, so we're all on board with that.
And let us know how we can help.
Tell me again what you know the difference between a district managed charter would be and a district operated school currently. What's the key difference again?
I was just gonna say and this is what Melissa Brady has been working on the last couple days, trying to find a little more of a defined difference between them. A district managed charter will have its own board. It will have it for its schools or school. And the separation between the individuals working within that school cannot be an employee of the school district.
Which is exceedingly stupid. Who else is going to staff those schools?
Well, it's an interesting concept, because there's a very fine line between that and just selling out your school to a charter school completely, to another agency that handles all of it. So, you know, I would be hesitant right now to try to describe what that really looks like, because that's what all of the school districts in the state right now are trying to gain a clearer understanding of before they actually make that decision.
I am squarely on the side of daring the state to do, like, drive a truck through the loopholes in the district managed charter, or the hell with them. I have no interest in this process. Is stupid and destructive and stigmatizing. Our legislators are terrible if they allow this. It's bad for kids. It's bad for communities. Everything about this is terrible.
And to be told Friday,
Correct.
and you have 1 week? Really?
Terrible.
1 week?
So
If there is any consolation in this,
What is it?
the letter that gets sent down explaining the option by the superintendent can be changed in the future if you should change your mind. So, we've been notified by the
You
state.
make an option, but you can change
You
Yes,
can
ma'am.
change it later.
option.
Per
Yes,
school then, or?
Yes.
Yes.
that keep this in mind. Neil Cumby and Kelly Stargell want to close Kathleen Middle. Repeat that, whoever's in the media. Kathleen Middle, if it doesn't make the grade, is going to close because of Neil Cumby and Kelly Stargell and Colleen Burton and Rick Scott. That's who's going to do it. And the terrible, what is her name, Pam Stewart, and all the terrible people on BOE. That's who's going to be doing this. Write that down.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you all very
So-
much.
So, one more question.
Oh.
All this, when do we know what she's going to do? I want to know before she submits it to the state, I wanna know, I mean,
She will let us know.
I will let her know that we've had this conversation as it has
Yes.
gone today,
Yes.
and
she
she
can
will
listen to the
absolutely.
recording would be
The board
really
had it.
good.
Yes, ma'am, she will get back with the board.
Okay.
See what they did.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so item 10 was removed from the discussion items and became an informational item if you had seen it previously, but it is done the information item. And I was told by the superintendent that items 7 through 10 that are informational, she did not have any questions arise on those. So I guess that would conclude our discussion items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so now we go back to the beginning of the day's agenda. And we have board comments, and then we'll go over the agenda for today's board meeting. Before we have comments, I wanted to read a statement for the record. At the last work session, the conversation got a little heated and personal. While each board member should feel free to express thoughts and opinions concerning items on the agenda and other board business, as the school board chair, I would really seriously ask board members to please do so in a courteous and civil manner. I would also like to remind everyone listening that although school board members are elected from individual residence areas, their election is district-wide. In other words, each school board member represents the entire district. However, the thoughts and the opinions expressed by individual school board members do not necessarily reflect official actions taken by the school board in its entirety. Individual school board members may and do disagree from time to time, and that's okay, that's natural. I just hope that when that happens, we can express ourselves respectfully and professionally, mindful of the example we're setting for parents, students, and employees throughout our district. And if we can just at least consider my comments as we get ready to have board comments, as we get ready to transact any business today, if we can just remember those things, I think that it would be good for our school district, but more than anything, it's gonna be good for our students. And Ms. Cunningham, I think your hand was out?
Yes, for board comments
Yes.
now? Okay, super. I just wanted to tell the board I'm sorry that I wasn't able to make the last work session. I did get stuck in my car. My husband was in the hospital and obviously could not help me, and I called a friend who was able to come get me, get my car towed and get it fixed. So by the time we had done all that, it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon by the time I had my car back. So I'm really sorry. I did feel passionately about that one subject that was coming up, and therefore asked if at least my voice could be heard. So thank you for understanding. It's been a very tough week for our family, but hopefully we're on the mend. So that concludes my report this morning.
Thanks, Ms. Cunningham. Does anybody else have comments?
Couple of things. One positive thing. I want to praise Carolyn Bridges and her staff for the Promised Neighborhood Grant they're working on. It's sort of a Magnet School type grant for neighborhood schools, as I understand. And I've got some of the talking points here. I think we're a long way off from getting anything for it, but what I like is that it is responsive to some of the concerns that have been raised about our magnet schools and the segregating effects they have. It's neighborhood focused. It seems like an extension of the community school project we're following. And moreover, this is the kind of thing we ought to be talking about right now, telling the public that we're doing. A lot of people have concerns about how we do magnet schools, the multiple tiers of schools. This shows responsiveness to concerns that people have raised, even if we're not to the point of executing it yet. The idea that we're pursuing this is, I think, significant, and I think it shows something of a change of direction, but potentially. I think we ought to be communicating with our stakeholders about that, and so I would just urge anybody who's in a position to do that, to talk about it, and I hope Carolyn will come give us a presentation on what they're up to soon. Secondly, it's getting a little bit late in the year. I've asked this a couple of times. I think it's time to, at some point, we're gonna revisit this. The contracts for Wes and for Carol. You know, we have the 3-year repeating auto renewal. Are we gonna discuss that at some point? I think we have to you have to send us a letter, what, the end of the month?
Correct.
Okay.
We have done their evaluations, they've been compiled, and we are going to be getting comments back from Wes and Carol concerning any statements that the board members made in their evaluation. And then we will give everybody that information, and then we'll be able to have discussion about the contracts and what they're offering, if anything, differently, and then based on their feedback, then the board can determine exactly what direction they want to go in as a majority.
Can you give, I'm sorry.
We hope to have that by the November board meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if everyone's done their ethics training yet, or I know Florida School Board Association will do it in December, but Central Florida Public School Board Coalition is offering it for free on the 13th of November in Orlando, and you don't have to be there till 10 o'clock. So you'll miss all of the I-4 traffic that Dr. Akes and I get to enjoy on those Monday mornings. So if any of you are interested, you should have gotten an email on the 17th about it. You just have to RSVP by Friday.
Or you can do it online.
Or you can do it online.
You can do it online,
Yes.
simple, right at your own convenience.
Ms. Wilson?
Could you give me those dates and times again?
It is
Got
the
an email.
Central Florida School Board Coalition one is, I can forward it to you.
Just forward it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna forward it to
Thank
you.
you, thank you.
All right, nothing else? We'll go directly into the agenda for today's board meeting. All right, we have one recognition of Red Ribbon Month. And we don't have any speakers to my knowledge about anything that's on today's agenda. We have approval of, I think, 2 sets of minutes. I think one was deleted. My computer crashed, so I'm having to start over, so I'm using a paper. No, I'll just, if I mess up, you can tell me.
Okay.
Then we go to approving the consent agenda. I don't believe we have any new administrators. How many? 5. 5, okay, all right. And then we go to the consent agenda and items C10 through C11. Anybody have any questions on those items? All right, C12 through C13. C14 through C17. And we have a whole bunch of donations, C18 through C55. Facilities and operations, general items, construction services, C56 through C62. Ms. Sellers?
And once again, I noticed we're demolishing 4 portables. Have we made sure that no one wants those portables? Have we put out any kind of advertisement for, to see? Because in the past, we've had people, and it saves us the cost of demolishing them.
Charter schools usually.
Yeah.
One of the difficulties that comes up from time to time is that they are such an age and a condition that we can't get a permit to allow them to be moved.
Oh, okay.
But,
I can throw in observation, because when I was in facilities and I was in charge of portables, I had that same concept. But one of the challenges that we face is portables are not built to commercial building standards. And most of the time when a person wants to buy one, they will never be given a certificate of occupancy unless they have an outside source for electricity. They will never get them wired, plumbed. And so-
Arts, the only reason I ask is because Arts Ensemble has asked for them, and we have in the past been able to donate them to them. And for whatever reason, because I've been in them, they refurbish them and they use them. So, and I know
Sometimes
that,
people will do that, but it's, the cost, for most people, they find it prohibitive, is the experience that I have. And I asked the same question 20 years ago.
and I don't really know how you advertise that, but I would hate to demolish one that could be used, because actually the Arts Ensemble, they do after-school programs, and I've seen them, we've
I remember
given them.
correctly, the 89 models, weren't they the mobile home frame models? Which were probably not the most sturdy built of all the portables that we've had.
That is correct. These 4 portables are 1989 one. They're the older wooden type, and for statutes, after so many years,
Right.
we're supposed to get rid of them. And usually, yes, if people want them, usually they want us to incur some part of that cost in getting it to them. So it's really not, and I mean.
Oh.
we
No,
are probably
the ones
wouldn't-
I've had, they come and get them and have refurbished them. And we did that just a couple of years ago for Arts Ensemble. So I don't know how we would advertise, but to let people know if they wanted them, but we don't, it actually saved us the cost of demolishing them. We don't pay to move them, they have to incur all of that. But, these may not be in any kind of shape that anybody would want.
These really needed to be demolished.
Just have to
The
check.
frame would be the most valuable part of some of these, or that was my experience on the mobile home type portable.
All right, the next item is C 63. And then we go into facility operations projects request, C 64 through C 67. C 78. And then we go to human resource services recommendations, C 79 through C 81. And then C 82 out of state field trips. We go to the regular agenda. And the first one is the R 83, and that is request to waive school board policy reference vacation leave. Anybody have any questions of yes, sir?
Just a comment, I just want to commend the superintendent, her staff, and the folks of the district for this change in policy, recommended change in policy. It's likely going to cost us money down the road, but I think it's the right thing to do, so.
I agree with you, we should have done this a while back.
You bet, yes ma'am.
R 84, we have one nomination for the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. And that is Mr. David Byrd. And who is recommending him?
Yours truly?
Excuse me? So did you want to do that when it's time?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay. All right, and then we have Edgenuity contract renewal, acceptance of Poinciana school site in lieu of impact fees. Anybody have any questions on that one? And then the last item under the regular agenda is elect the Montessori Schoolhouse request for contract modification for 15 years. And we have a public hearing on policy updates. And Mr. Bridges, I know that we have to get comments from the public, and we can do all these policies at one time, or do we have to do them individually?
If there is one that a board member wished to pull for a separate vote for a particular reason, that can certainly happen. If, once the public has had input, if there's no controversy, you could do them, you could pass them as a slate.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Once again, if anybody has an issue with any one of them, any board member, mention that up front, and it can be pulled for a separate vote.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, Mr. Hutek, we'll hear from you as a superintendent report. And then we have our board members report, and then, any speakers from the community, and we'll be done. And so we are done until 4 o'clock for our discipline hearing.